Greetings and salutations, travelers of the internet. Welcome to the Lit Round Table. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Anna. We'll be your wise, or not so wise, mentors for today's audio adventure into all things storytelling.
Woo! So this is what we're calling episode 0.
Yes, because this is our very first time doing something like this.
Yes, we are new to the podcasting world, so bear with us if things go wrong.
Or we're just in my home office, so we'll be making improvements to like audio things as we go.
Yeah, probably. Forgive any potential car alarms or
trains. Can't really help the trains, so
yeah, where we are, there are a ton of trains.
Because we're in the Midwest, so
we are in the Midwest.
We're in the heartland, which means trains go by. Thankfully, we have a no horn ordinance in our town, though, so we shouldn't hear any whistling, but you can definitely still hear them on the tracks.
Oh yeah, it's amazing the things that you hear once you have a mic plugged in.
Yeah.
So
yes.
So the purpose of episode 0 is to just kind of introduce ourselves and also talk about what we're going to be talking about on the podcast. And we're going to go over structure things like how often we're going to upload and some structure stuff there. So to start, we'll introduce ourselves, and I am going to invoke the ancient tradition of ladies first.
Oh, well, let's start off by saying that Joseph and I are siblings, and I am his older sister. What?
Nothing.
Oh. I'm his older sister. We grew up in the Midwest. We've lived here our whole lives, with a few minor short-term escapes to what is a little more west and less Midwest in Colorado. But yeah, that's our cultural background anyway. So I am currently an IT person, but have a background in I'm rambling here. I should have thought about what I was going to say more. You're gonna have to cut all a bunch of stuff out.
No, it's fine. That's what podcasts are. It's just people rambling.
I have my BA in English with an emphasis in creative writing, and then I took a year off after that, and then worked on my Master of Fine Arts from doesn't really matter what school I went to, but Western State Colorado University, and I have a MFA in creative writing, specifically genre fiction. So that is my educational background into why storytelling is important to me. And just really love reading and creating in general, but specifically writing. So what else do you want to know about me?
What if you could pick any superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I hate this question because I never know what my answer. I feel like it changes every time. I feel like I know you have an answer for this locked and loaded.
I'm ready.
Probably time travel right now.
That's a very good one.
Yeah, because then I could go back and actually see how life really was in different time periods in different countries. And
oh, I thought you were going to say you wanted to skip the rest of this year.
Oh, that too. So I will gladly skip. I don't even want 2021. I just want 2022. Because I feel like by then at least
if you're listening to this, down. If you're listening to this later on, it's currently, what day is it? August 30th?
Yes.
2020.
Yes.
What a hellscape this year has been. This year is the worst TM.
Yeah, laughing to cope. Ha ha.
Yeah, using my dark humor to get through the day. So, and that's partially why we're doing this is because, actually with our jobs, we don't really have as much downtime because we both work
a lot,
quote unquote, essential jobs, whatever that means. Because that's true. But, so we haven't really had downtime, but this is just something we've wanted to do for a while. So
yeah.
Anyway,
it's something we enjoy doing. So obviously we haven't podcasted before, but we enjoy talking to each other about storytelling and what we're reading. So it felt like a natural way to segue into something where other people could also maybe enjoy what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I guess it's my turn.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself.
My name's Joseph. Everyone usually calls me Joseph. Only a select few people have ever called me Joe. But, I don't care either way, really, that much.
I wouldn't know someone was talking about you if they called you Joe.
Right? Actually, no, call me Joseph because my brother-in-law's name is Joe.
Right.
And that's weird. So,
Yes.
Joseph. Anyway, so that's me. I am 3 years younger than Anna. We both grew up in the Midwest together. I ended up getting really into fantasy and storytelling and all that stuff kind of because of you and also Dad
Yes.
partially. Well, just because, Dad kind of imparted his nerdiness to you, and then you kind of also passed it to me.
Yeah, because I jump
you.
into things like 110%
Right.
a lot of the time.
Yeah. So I definitely got it from you initially, but then it just kind of grew on its own from there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we both went to the same high school. And then once you left for college, I was stuck at home for 3 years all by myself with
Yeah.
Hansi. We have a family dog. He's a little wiener dog, but he's a little turd.
Yes. But a cute turd.
Yeah, he's lucky that he's cute. He is very cute. But I ended up going to college in Colorado. Not the school you went to grad school with.
No.
I went to Colorado Film School in the Aurora/Denver area. I really hope I don't sneeze right now. We're okay.
COVID.
Nope, it's not COVID. Sneezing isn't a symptom. I think. Oh gosh, I think. Don't roast me if it is. I'm sorry. I'm not a medical professional. I went to film school for 2 years and got an associate's degree. So, you're more highly educated than I am, but
It's just different.
yeah. But
I am jealous because I have way more accrued student debt than you have.
that is very true.
So I would say you're winning in that
Didn't
regard.
go to grad school, so I'm not
Yeah.
swimming in debt. But yes, I went to film school at Colorado Film School for a couple years. And that's because I've always loved that. I was always fascinated by that process of how a movie is made, how TV shows are made. A lot of that's because of watching the behind the scenes stuff from the Lord of the Rings extended editions. That was
So good.
that was really what made me super interested in that process, and that was pretty much why I decided to go to film school. Unfortunately, I was going to be there for 4 years, but then it was this weird janky situation at the school where they
Totally outside of your control.
they kind of pulled the rug out from under me and canceled the 4-year program halfway through my first year there, and I didn't grandfather in, so
Yeah.
that was cool of them. But I came out of it with less student debt, and I moved back to Nebraska, which was fine because my wife, Hope, was going to school in Nebraska. Even though she's from California, she was going to school in Nebraska. So I got to be closer to her because we were dating at the time. And it all just kind of worked out. So then after being back here, I just kind of stayed here, got married, and just moved out and living life. But still have maintained that love of storytelling, doing some kind of video stuff on the side, embracing that side gig
Yeah.
thing while doing my full-time job, which is just a retail job. I'm a manager at a shoe store, but it's whatever.
Pays the bills.
It does pay the bills. And in a world where millions of people are unemployed, I will take a steady paycheck.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, that's kind of me. I've kind of gotten back into reading lately. I kind of took a reading hiatus where I hadn't really read for fun in a long time. So yeah, I've gotten back into reading recently, and it's been really fun. I hadn't read for recreationally in a really long time. I finally read through Lord of the Rings when I got back from college, and also the Silmarillion. But then after that, I kind of took a 2 or 3 year break of not reading anything.
Yeah.
So I got back into it recently, and it's been really fun. And so that has also been kind of an inspiration of getting back into this or doing the podcast, since you're a writer, and we have really fun conversations about writing and
Yeah.
stories and all that good stuff. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's kind of who we are.
Yeah.
So, the next thing we're going to go over would be why we like what we like. So,
Right.
you kind of got me into the whole genre fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, all of that. So
I'm not gonna take credit for you getting into sci-fi because that was definitely our dad.
Yeah, that's thanks to Star Wars.
Yeah. And Star Trek.
And Star Trek.
And Stargate. Like
And Stargate.
lots
of
of
stars.
sci-fi. Lots of stars, lots of sci-fi. Or spec fic.
The only thing we didn't do was Battlestar Galactica. That was one that we didn't ever really get into.
No.
But yeah, Dad kind of imparted his, again, nerdiness onto you. So how, kind of go through that. How did you get into everything that you're into?
Well, I remember watching Star Trek with Dad when I was like 3. I remember eating ice cream sandwiches and watching Star Trek. But I don't remember like what happened in the episodes. I mostly just remember the theme song. And then I also remember like the first time watching Star Wars with Dad. So like that was my first real introduction to anything that was speculative fiction. But what you're referencing is like my love for fantasy specifically. I, when I was younger, did not like reading and was not a very strong reader. I was always in the second reading group in school, which was like the lower end reading group. And just didn't enjoy it much. But I remember Dad had a copy of The Hobbit. I said that word. Had a copy of The Hobbit that he wanted me to read. And I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. And he had brought it into me in my bedroom and was like, you should put this on your bookshelf and you should read it sometime. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then I didn't read it right away. But once I did read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get enough of this. This is amazing. I want to read more of this. And so I had read like all of the Lord of the Rings before 5th grade.
Wow.
Because I was so obsessed with this other world.
And would you say you were able to actually like process what you were reading?
Oh my gosh,
at that age?
Well, sort of. I understood the storyline and like the characters, which is like a huge part of storytelling. But
because I feel like a lot of people try to read The Fellowship of the Ring and they give up before Frodo even leaves the Shire because it's kind of a slow start.
It is. It's a very slow start, and I didn't recognize that as a kid. I think I don't know why I was so moved to keep reading it at that young of an age, because now as an adult, when I go back and reread it, I'm like, wow, this takes forever. But I also think as an adult, I'm internalizing and processing more of what's actually happening and more of the themes in the story versus just like what was happening, if that makes sense. Because anyone who's read Tolkien knows that he can be quite wordy. And like his descriptions of like the landscape is very involved.
Oh yeah.
And beautiful writing, like just lovely, but dense.
Some of the most quotable fantasy ever. Like Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost. You see that on like random like
hipster stuff.
Yeah, hipster aesthetic like
Yes.
home decor things. And it's like, I bet you didn't know that was a Tolkien quote, but it is.
Yes. Or this is funny. I had quoted "Deep roots are not reached by the frost" to our dad, who is also a huge Tolkien nerd. And he didn't remember that it was part of Aragorn's poem.
Shameful.
And I was like, he goes, "Oh wow, you should include that in your book." And I was like, I did not write that.
That would be plagiarism.
That was straight up Tolkien, not me. But I appreciate that you're confident in my writing, that I came up with something that beautiful. But yeah, so from there it was just, I couldn't get my hands on enough fantasy. And at that time was also, like, that is what became like the starting point for me being a reader. And I really just wanted more of that, which is hard to get when you're, 5th grade. So I read a lot of Star Wars books.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot. I own a lot of Star Wars books. And I also read a lot of Dragonlance books, which I didn't know at the time are basically just D&D novels. But I read a lot of that too in middle school. So, yeah. What about you though? Like, how did me getting into all of that inspire you?
So I was witnessing this thing happen to you where you, in my mind, I was like, this girl has a problem.
I mean, fair.
So,
that's a fair assumption to make after all of that.
Anna, how many Star Wars Expanded Universe novels do you think you own?
Probably close to 50.
They're sitting on a shelf next to us. I would say there's more than 10 per stack, and there's 4 stacks. So yeah, that's around 50.
There's also a half stack that you're not looking at.
Oh, you're right. You're right. So
close to 50 would be my guess.
Yeah, you've got a lot, and you've read
do.
most of them.
Yeah, there's only like maybe a handful that I haven't read yet.
Yeah.
But that's mostly because I fell off reading for a while, and I want to read through them all again in order. I know. I'm crazy.
I didn't know you wanted to reread all of them.
Yes, I do.
Oh
Because I read them in middle school. Like, that was a long time ago, but I remember some like really... I don't want to like turn into a Star Wars apologist here, but there were a lot of things in those novelizations that are genuinely incredible storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, they're not using original characters, although some of them are original because they're not part of like the traditional Star Wars saga. Mm-hmm. But they did some really cool things with storytelling. There's a reason people read them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just retelling the same story over and over again. They're unique. And I really enjoyed them a lot.
And some of them have really awesome cover art,
oh
too.
My gosh, beautiful.
Some of the coolest sci-fi cover art
is Star Wars novels.
Yeah. They're so cool.
It's true.
Yeah, so I witnessed you going to the bookstore and buying like anywhere from 1 to 3 Star Wars books at a time. Like,
I also checked out from the library.
That's true too.
Buy everything.
But and then I was just kind of like, oh, this must be kind of cool. These must be good. So like I only read like 1 or 2 of those Star Wars books that you read. But
yeah. You were quite a bit younger though when I was going. Like, these books would not have been an easy thing for you to read at the age that I was reading them.
So our dad showed us Star Wars at a really young age. Well, the first one anyway. He kind of waited between movies to show us the next ones because they kind of got more and more
scary.
Yeah. Like the first one didn't really have much scary stuff, but then the second one had the Wampa in the beginning in the ice cave, and like the swamp monster that eats R2, and Luke getting his hand chopped off.
Yeah. We waited a long time to watch Return of the Jedi, though, because the Rancor pit.
The Rancor scared me.
And the pit of Sarlacc is scary.
And the Sarlacc pit scared me. So we did have to wait. But so I got really, really into Star Wars. I think I probably got more into Star Wars than Lord of the Rings at first.
Oh, yeah.
So Star Wars was really my first introduction to fantasy and sci-fi. I think you could definitely make the argument that Star Wars is fantasy just because of the structure of the story. Mm-hmm. It's just fantasy set in space. It's just space wizards and laser swords. You know? There's still a chosen one, a literal chosen one.
Oh yeah, no, yes.
And so it's very fantasy in the storytelling in like a sci-fi space opera environment. So I really, really liked Star Wars. But then you were also getting into Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and the first thing that I really remember about getting into that was the McDonald's toys.
Really?
From when the Fellowship of the Ring came out. It was
weird.
These little McDonald's toys where you would like set them on their stand and their stands would arrange into like a ring. Like their stands were almost like a wedge.
Oh my gosh.
And you would arrange them in a ring and they would light up on their stands. And it was all these different characters. Like there was a Galadriel and...
Oh my gosh. I had like forgotten about that. But I literally have the 3 of them on my bookshelf right now.
Uh-huh. I'm looking at them right now. There's Galadriel and Celeborn and Mary. And there was also an Uruk-hai that had the white hand that lit up on the shield, but I'm pretty sure Hansi ate his arm off and I threw him away.
I had forgotten that those were a McDonald's toy and that they had bases because I mean, the bases stopped working eventually and got rid of them, but I still have the figurines themselves. So
yeah, and they're
funny.
all up there.
I didn't realize that was like a defining thing for you in this journey.
Yeah, these little McDonald's toys from Lord of the Rings, because that was kind of the first action figures we had for Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
And then we got really into, like, I already was really into Star Wars action figures, but then we got really into Lord of the Rings action figures that we got every year for Christmas for, like, as long as those movies were coming out.
Yeah.
But no, then I started asking questions about Lord of the Rings, and I was like, oh, who are these characters? Why are these characters so much shorter than these other characters?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what's a hobbit? Like, why are they the way that they are? And then that kind of started my fascination with, like, fantasy, like, strictly fantasy. And I was always asking questions, like, during dinner about, like, who these characters were, what happens in the story. And you guys would be trying really, you and Dad would be trying really hard to, like, answer questions, but also not give spoilers. But I mean, I also, like, ended up knowing how all these stories went before I even read the books because...
You saw the movies.
I saw the movies, so it didn't
Which
matter.
I was not allowed to see the movies until I had read the books.
Yeah.
And originally, Dad said that we would not be able to see the movies until you had read the books. And you were a little second grader. And I was like, I'm going to have to wait forever to see these movies. And was so bummed and just wanted you to read them so bad just so that we could see The Fellowship of the Ring, which we didn't get to see in theaters.
Nope.
Mom and Dad did, but we did not.
Yeah. Well, I was young and...
Yes, you were.
There were parts of that movie that freaked me out too with the...
The ring wraiths. And Gollum, I suppose.
The ring wraiths are freaky, but I don't think they were... I think it was like the Watcher in the water.
Oh my god, yeah, okay.
Before Moria, the
Right.
tentacle monster that jumps out at him. That freaked me out because I already had a dislike of, like, swimming in lakes where you can't see the bottom of the water. And
Yeah.
I still am freaked out by lakes and, like, the ocean and the idea of some creepy crawly grabbing you and pulling you under. And
Yeah.
that was like the epitome of that fear was the
Yeah.
Watcher in the water.
I get that.
So that freaked me out.
And the Balrog is scary, and there's
Right.
definitely scary stuff. And all the orcs and
Orcs
goblins.
getting pried out of mud
Ugh.
for some reason.
Anyway.
That's nasty. But anyway, so I also got really into Lord of the Rings. And that really started my fantasy journey. At that point, I was really getting into, like, that. Like, we had watched all the movies as they came out, got really into the action figures. Eventually, I did read more middle grade fantasy stuff and YA fantasy stuff, like
Which
Aragon.
I pretty much skipped.
Yeah, because you were in the Star Wars land.
Yeah, yes.
So I read Aragon, at least the first 3. I never did get around to reading the 4th one, which I need to do. Sorry, Christopher Paolini, I will get there. I read those. I read these Ranger's Apprentice books, at least a good portion of them, until I kind of aged out of those, because he ended up making like 14 of them. But I read like the first 3 or 4. These Pendragon books that were always in the library at school. Yeah, there was a lot of cool middle grade and YA fantasy books that I was getting into. And then, I feel like I did eventually, probably junior or senior year in high school, I kind of piddled out with the reading, and I kind of just read what I was assigned in English class. And other than that, I was just, like, watching TV and movies, and I kind of veered away from that because those are easier to ingest, arguably.
Yeah.
But then once, because I had also kind of backtracking, but I attempted to read The Lord of the Rings several times.
And got stuck by the Shire.
Attempted. And I always got stuck somewhere, like before they left the Shire or even after. Like they're just tromping around and it's like they get to Rivendell and then the Council of Elrond just killed me.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot.
It's a long chapter. It's a very long chapter. But so I had attempted to read it, but then after college, the Hobbit movies were coming out, which we can talk about that later too.
That could be its own.
That can be its own thing. Those Hobbit movies.
Oh my goodness.
The Hobbit movies. So I had decided to try reading them again because like I had known things about like what was in the books but not in the movies, like Tom Bombadil and the
mostly Skyrim. Because Dad and I talked about it ad nauseum.
And the Scouring of the Shire is another big thing. So I already knew these things happened. I knew that's not how Saruman died, falling off of Orthanc and getting skewered. I knew that's not how he died, but...
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, okay. If you haven't seen the Lord of the Rings extended editions by now in 2020, that's your fault. What are you doing with your life? So I attempted to read them again, and I kind of got stuck. This was like... Actually, that was after high school. But then once I got done with college, I was getting really into like the lore behind Lord of the Rings and like the Silmarillion. I was following blogs online that talked about all the crazy stuff that happened in the Silmarillion. And I was like, oh, wow, that sounds really cool. So I ended up reading through the Silmarillion and then reading through The Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King again. So I kind of ended up doing it backwards to what most people did.
Yes. Did you ever read The Hobbit?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I did read The Hobbit when I was really little, like in 3rd grade.
Okay,
so
that's what I thought.
I had read that one because that one's an easier read.
Much easier.
So yeah, but because of that, I was able to pick up like all these fun Easter eggs that Tolkien put in the trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because he's a huge nerd and like he just can't help name dropping things that no one had ever heard of and that no one would ever even know about if it wasn't for the Silmarillion. Like in the Council of Elrond name drops and Calagon the Black, which was like this dragon in the Silmarillion that no one knows anything about.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to interject here and say that you have technically read more Tolkien than I have. Because of that, I have not read the whole Silmarillion yet.
Which
I'm
I
working
have been
on it.
trying to get you to read forever.
I know. I have read pieces of it, and I have read pieces of most of the Histories of Middle-earth, which are a bunch of other books out there. But I have not technically read the Silmarillion in its full glory yet. So.
Yes, you will get there.
I will.
It's amazing. One of my favorite books. And it reads definitely like a history book, but it's so good. But anyway, so that really helped me get through the Lord of the Rings trilogy because I had that knowledge of like the backstory of how everything came to be. I knew where Sauron came from. I knew where the wizards came from. I knew why Galadriel was the way she was.
Yeah.
Like I knew all this stuff. So it actually made it easier for me to get through the actual trilogy. So that was awesome. I made it through. It's amazing. I love Lord of the Rings so much. It's like my favorite fantasy franchise ever.
Mine too.
And during this time, I also got into like video games. Like when the movies were coming out, they always came out with a companion video game.
Yeah.
Like the Two Towers video game and Return of the King video game. Those were really cool. I really like those a lot. So, and that kind of springboarded me getting into video games, which unfortunately kind of took away from the reading as well.
Yeah.
But
I didn't even talk about my writing stuff. I'll have to go back to that after you finish.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
There's a lot to our lives and to why we like the things we like.
Yes.
But so that's Lord of the Rings. Yeah, and then recently I have gotten into reading other fantasy works. I just finished reading the Era 1 of the Mistborn series. So that's Mistborn and then Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages. And those really, really moved me, which I wasn't expecting to happen. But those really, I'd never had that strong of an emotional response to like any work of fiction I had ever read.
Wow.
So kudos to Brandon Sanderson for making me openly sob by myself at night. My wife's in bed and I'm just sobbing into a pillow in the living room.
Oh my gosh.
In a good way.
Yeah, I know.
But it was just, and I kind of had that kind of a reaction after I read The Silmarillion because I was listening to like Lord of the Rings music as I was reading and I finished it and like the Grey Havens music was playing as I finished it. And it was just like the stars aligned just to crush me emotionally. But so that has happened to me in a book before, but the Mistborn Era 1 just destroyed me in a good way. But
yeah.
And then I was like, wow, there's more than just Lord of the Rings in fantasy.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I need to get into this stuff. So I've started reading the first Wheel of Time book because that is one that people talk about a lot online. I have followed a lot of fantasy and writing channels on YouTube now that I'm keeping up with, like Daniel Green. He's really awesome. Shout out to him. And there's just so many. But yeah, so that's kind of where I am now. I'm a huge nerd. I love Lord of the Rings. I love fantasy. I love Star Wars and Star Trek and sci-fi and all that good stuff. Yeah. And, you know, of course, you know, Marvel movies, like superhero movies, love those too.
Yeah.
So yeah, really into all of it.
Yeah.
So,
well, like what got you into filmmaking was watching those extended edition like features for The Lord of the Rings and how in depth they went into the process and how inviting they were to just casual watchers to see what that whole process looked like. So it was pretty influential for you as well.
Because you got to see how the actors interacted with the crew. Just the sheer number of people on the... I didn't realize that it was like a small army.
Yeah.
That it took to make those movies. When you look at all the crew, all the extras, it was just incredible. It's just...
Let alone like a huge cast. Like,
yeah.
You know.
Just a huge... And
principal actors. There's a ton of them.
And also, like, when's the last time a fantasy movie won Best Picture?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know, but it had been forever if any ever have.
Right.
When Return of the King won all those Oscars, that was kind of like a defining moment in
it won
cinema.
everything it was nominated for.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of.
Unheard of. So,
super cool.
So yeah, those really were inspirational to me to want to go to film school. Yeah. And then you...
Yeah, so like
you forgot to mention
writing.
how you write. So
yeah, so my writing journey started in 5th grade, and I started to write a story called Toy Wars, which you don't remember this.
I didn't know that was the title.
Yes. This was basically me writing Star Wars fan fiction, but the characters were the action figures. And the only thing that I really remember is that I had a whole thing about how this Darth Vader character was eating plastic eggs for breakfast because he was a plastic toy. And so, of course, he ate plastic eggs.
Naturally.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah. My original like mode of storytelling and writing was very third person omniscient. So like you're the eagle above what's happening in the story, which is not a typical way that people ingest story now, but it is the way that Tolkien writes. So that's where I was getting that from, but was really invested in writing Star Wars. Not well, but I was also in 5th grade, so I'm going to give myself some grace there.
Oh yeah. I mean, anyone who starts writing in 5th grade,
yeah,
you're at whatever grade reading level.
Right.
You're not going to be good.
No. No. Even though I was ingesting like really high level fiction at the time, my writing level was not up to par.
I mean, it's a skill that you have to practice.
Oh, absolutely. And then I, in middle school, started writing an epic fantasy that I'm still like obsessed with that world and living in it and writing in it. And it's changed a lot. But I am excited to be at a place now where I can actually like tell a story decently well. And it's hard to be self-gratifying a little bit. But I'm excited to actually work in that world and get something finished that I can actually query and send out to publishing houses. So,
right. So
which is the end goal.
You've written a lot of drafts of a certain one, and then there was one that you completed for your grad school thesis,
which is like a prequel.
Which is like a prequel to this series that you want to write, and then there's this one that you're working on now that is also
a prequel. It actually is a
standalone kind of prequel.
It's a standalone, but it actually comes in the storyline before
the events of the series that you want to write.
Before the prequel.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah, that makes sense. Because I've read the thesis one, and yeah, that makes sense. So
yeah. So, and I'm excited to be working on something new in that world. And it's fun.
It's always good to get a fresh kind of perspective as far as characters go. I feel like, I'm sure it's true that if you write like as from the POV of a certain character for too long, you're just like, I need a fresh perspective on the situation, which I feel like readers are also intuitive with. Like they get bored of reading from one POV, unless that's like a first person book and that's all you get. But
right.
But
yeah.
So yes, you're a writer.
Yes.
It's very cool.
Yes, I think so. It's fun. I enjoy it.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, so that's us. That's
that's who we are.
That's who we are, what we like, why we like it. So yeah, that's kind of what this podcast is going to be about. We're going to talk about different franchises. We could do a whole series on Lord of the Rings, and like
I feel like this first episode 0 has turned into a Lord of the Rings fan fest a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. That's okay though.
It's like deeply ingrained in how we process story and how we tell story. So it's integral into like how we view the genre.
Mm-hmm. It's the franchise that started it all for us. That and Star Wars, which is a whole other ball of wax. But so we're going to be talking about these different story franchises, really all things storytelling. We're going to talk about movies, we can talk about video games, we can talk about anything that tells a story that we enjoy and why we enjoyed it. Maybe we'll go over some things that we didn't enjoy and why that was. The Hobbit trilogy. And
I'm trying to keep my cool about it because that I
there were
really
good things. There were some.
I know.
The casting was great.
Yes, I agree.
The dragon was great.
Yes, I agree.
Anyway, so the story.
We're gonna save it.
Okay, we're gonna save it.
Because it's like a whole rabbit hole that I have a hard time clawing my way out of once I get into it.
Yeah. With that being said, we're gonna talk about a lot of stuff, and I'm excited to talk about it with you because I feel like we talk about this stuff just on our downtime anyway. Like if we're getting lunch or dinner somewhere, we'll just start talking about this stuff and we can talk for hours. And it's like, well, let's share in that and let's include other people in the conversation. So yeah,
because we're both also big learners. Like we're both constantly learning new things and seeking out new things to learn about. So we recognize that it's easy to kind of get in a bubble. So we thought by introducing other people to the conversation, there's more opportunities for us to like learn about things that we didn't even know that we wanted to learn about. So we're excited to get some interaction from you guys as well, and whoever's out there listening.
The two people for this first one.
Yes.
That's fine.
Our mom and dad.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Our mom will not.
So the three people.
Your wife and our dad. Because mom's not going to be into
Yeah.
it. No, she might be. She would listen out of support, but our mom is not as nerdy as the rest of us.
No, she's nerdy in a different way. Both of our parents are artists.
Yes.
That also definitely inspired us to be creative people. So we forgot
Very
to mention
talented
that.
artists.
Mom's a painter. Dad did a lot of sculpting stuff.
He also paints.
And he is also a capable painter.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was also a big reason why we got into creativity and the things that we do, and both went into artsy college things. And,
yes.
Yeah. So we're really looking forward to talking about this stuff more with you guys and with each other. And if you guys have recommendations for books, movies, TV shows, don't hesitate to let us know. However,
even video games.
And video games, yeah, music even. That's I mean, you can tell a story with music too. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So let us know however you can in whichever platform you're listening to this on. If it's YouTube, drop a comment. If it's whatever. So yeah, let's go into like kind of the format of how we're going to be doing this.
Yes.
So I'll let you kind of take it away on that.
Yeah, so I'm planning on this podcast having a Twitter account so we can get some interaction that way, because I think there is a way to comment on Apple Podcasts, but I never go to Apple Podcasts commenting sections. So there's a dumb way to say that, but you get what I'm saying. So we're planning to have other like means of us being able to communicate with you guys. But we'll have videos uploaded on YouTube of the audio, so you can listen there if that's where you ingest podcasts, but it'll also be available on other streaming services like Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
And if you are going to do the YouTube route, there will be, I think I'm planning on putting up some pictures of some of the things we're talking about. Like I took a picture of Anna's crazy Star Wars book collection, so I might put that up in the video. So the YouTube one is a good opportunity for you to see some of the things we're talking about as well. So that'll be kind of a fun thing too.
Yeah.
So.
And our tentative plan right now is to upload every other week. So just because we are both working a lot, so it makes it harder to commit to a weekly schedule, but maybe in the future that'll be something that's more possible.
Someday I would love to do a weekly thing.
Absolutely. But for now, every other week is kind of what we're shooting for. And we're also contemplating and entertaining the idea of doing some solo things on the YouTube channel, at least. It probably won't necessarily be uploaded to the podcast itself, but so if you're wanting extra content, YouTube will be the place where Joseph might do some more like video editing or book review type content, and I will probably do more book review content as well, because we're not necessarily reading the same things at the same time, but that is something we're considering doing so that we can have like specific books to talk about on here together, because that's fun. But I've also read we have very different like reading histories once we get outside of the Lord of the Rings bubble, and like the things that I read after that and what Joseph has read. So
right, because I'm planning on doing this, doing a video that talks about and reviews the Era 1 Mistborn trilogy,
which I have not read yet.
So I would make a separate video of just me talking about that. Because I don't want it to be spoiled for you, because I really want you to read them too. So
and I will read them. That is the plan.
So like you said, it's a good way for us to talk about books that we ever read without spoiling them for the other person.
Yes.
So yeah, that is a plan that we're going to end up doing probably. And so be looking out for that. I guess we can, we haven't really landed on what, I guess you can just look for Lit Roundtable on YouTube or however wherever we put this. So, and since this is kind of episode 0, we'll have things kind of more put together in episode 1, and we can,
we wanted this to be fairly unstructured, just as introductions go, and have it be pretty organic. And we want this to be more of a conversation and less of a, I'm going to read you this essay that I wrote about this specific thing.
Right. That can be the standalone. Individual videos can be more like video essays, but this is definitely more like we have bullet points, but we're not afraid of rabbit trails, and we're not afraid of veering off into wherever the conversation takes us. So
right, which may become an issue for some episodes, but
so sorry about that ahead of time.
But it's fun. It'll be good. It'll be good stuff, though.
Mm-hmm.
Good content, I think.
Yeah.
I think we talk about cool stuff.
Right. Me too.
Good. I'm glad we're both here.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, there we have it.
Yeah. That's our first podcast. It's a wrap.
Yep.
Woo-hoo!
Episode 0 of the Lit Round Table. We will talk to you guys next time. Go read something cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
See you next time.